Hi Beats, it's EKG. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Ebony and I hope you're doing very well today. I am going to be going over my favorite books of 2021. I hope that you are doing well, enjoying the holiday season, staying safe first and foremost. So I'm just going to be sharing with you today my top 10 favorite books of 2021. I read a lot of great books. It was very hard for me to choose my top 10. Does anyone else have that problem? So basically how I decide what book is my favorite book or makes it into the top 10 list is if it's something that I can't stop recommending to other people, and if it is also something that I think about constantly or that has changed me on a molecular level. So the first book is Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And this is an autobiography letter to his son, who is a teenager, written about the Black experience in America, things to look out for, and things that Ta-Nehisi Coates has had to come to terms with. I thought the exploration of Black's places was very interesting. He talks about going to HBCU and how that allowed him to grow and to learn more about prominent Black figures who have come before him. And I just thought that it was a very insightful read and something that everyone should read. I definitely recommend that you check out Between the World and Me. I thought it was fire and I couldn't stop recommending it. So next, coming in at number 10, I have Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I have not been able to stop thinking about the email exchanges between Alice and Eileen. Beautiful World, Where Are You follows Alice and Eileen. Alice, who is a successful author, and Eileen, who works in publishing, and just basically their grapplings with trying to enjoy the world, but then also realizing that civilization is fragile and life is fragile, and what to do with that information and how to process it and how to move forward. And I just thought that Beautiful World, Where Are You was one of Sally Rooney's more hopeful reads. I felt very happy and hopeful towards the end of the book. I love books that center on writers. I'm trying to be a writer, so I just feel seen in those narratives. So that's what really stuck out to me, and that's what I appreciated the most about Beautiful World, Where Are You? Okay, so this year I've been getting into audiobooks, which is something that I struggled with in the past. I didn't really think that I would ever enjoy audiobooks, but one audiobook, and I think the first audiobook that I read or listened to, was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, and I thought it was phenomenal. Crying in H Mart is such a good book, such a great memoir. And Michelle is the singer, or she's in a band called Japanese Breakfast, and she wrote a memoir documenting or chronicling her time of her mother being diagnosed with cancer, how that affected her and her family. She also explores identity, being half white and half Korean, and how food ties her, how Korean food ties her to her mother and to her family that she tried to distance herself from when she was a young adult growing up in America. So I just thought that that was very interesting, and just the discussions around food and grief and love and family was so powerful. It really made me cry in public, which I'm not a crier, and it was just such a touching story. And falling along the lines of audiobooks that absolutely killed it, Daisy Jones and the Six, specifically on audiobook. It's narrated by a full cast, and I don't think that if I read the book on my own I would have liked it, because I don't tend to like stories with a lot of characters speaking at once. It gets very confusing for me and very muddled, but having the full cast narrating and reading their parts was so good. I was full on believing that this is a real rock band coming up in the 70s. But essentially, Daisy Jones and the Six details the up-and-coming band of Daisy Jones and the Six, who were operating as separate entities until a manager decides to put Daisy Jones, who is very beautiful, very iconic, kind of grungy character, and Billy Doon, who is the lead singer of the Six, a rock band, together, and what they make is pure magic. I believe there's a show coming out for Daisy Jones and the Six, and I'm so excited. I cannot wait to watch it. I hope they really do the story justice because it obviously made it into my top 10 books of 2021. Before we get into my top 5 favorite books of 2021, I want to do a brief little intermission and discuss some poetry collections that I really enjoyed this year. So I have my top 3 poetry collections that just really resonated with me, that I keep thinking about and referring to. And at number 3, I have Citizen, an American Lyric by Claudia Rankine. Claudia Rankine writes poetry that explores different perspectives. So she utilizes the second person, which some people are not a fan of, but I think it's really effective because her writing is so visceral. She puts you into the perspective of someone acting with their privilege and someone who is underprivileged, and microaggressions and how that affects them. There's just an awareness to Claudia Rankine's writing, and she explores multitude of issues surrounding race in America, specifically for Black people, and how that affects their psyche, our psyche, and it's just required reading. At number 2, I have Sweet Dark by Savannah Brown. But Sweet Dark explores the ordinary and relates that to the extraordinary, and that's exactly what she did in this book. I just thought it was so phenomenal. I loved so many poems in here. I dog-eared my pages, and I dog-eared basically every other page. Her writing just really spoke to me. She utilizes imagery of like the natural world, but then makes it very physical by relating it to our bodies and the things that our bodies do and the way that we feel, and I just thought that was phenomenal. And my top favorite poetry collection should be no surprise. If you are a viewer of my channel, you know that I'm a Mary Oliver stan, Mary Oliver fangirl. I've been one for a minute, okay? And I just loved Dreamwork. It was so good. I mean, Wild Geese is in here. It basically just explores this dreamlike state of being an artist. Mary Oliver talks about her struggles with mental health, relating it to other prominent artists, but this collection feels very hopeful. There's a lot of inspiring poems in here, just a lot of poems that make you feel good despite the heavy subject matter at times. All right, so next we're gonna get into my top 5 favorite books of 20. Am I losing it? Wait, I'm actually losing it because I didn't talk about my 6th favorite book. So my 6th favorite book is Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. So sad. Unfortunately, she passed away last week, and it was heartbreaking news for me because I just fell in love with her work, but we still have it. So that's something that is very exciting and comforting. But Play It As It Lays was phenomenal. Oh my God. So it's my first Joan Didion, and it follows Mariah Wyeth, who is a actress finding her way in Hollywood. She recently starred as the main subject for her husband, filmmaker, films, and she grapples with fame, and she feels a sense of losing everything that she has control over. So that's where the title comes from, Play It As It Lays. Mariah is a very nihilist, factual character, and she believes that she just has to roll with the punches and play the hand that's dealt to her. Joan Didion's writing is very sharp and fast-paced, and just the intentionality behind Joan Didion's sentences and the structure of her stories is so phenomenal. Play It As It Lays is probably one of the first books that I've ever finished reading and immediately wanted to reread it. So next we're getting into my top 5 favorite books. The first book I would love to mention, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I read this for the first time this year, and let me just say, James Baldwin is also a master. Obviously, I don't need to say that to you, but the craftsmanship of writing is something as a writer that I thoroughly enjoyed and learned so much from. His building of his characters and also the setting really propels the story forward. Basically, Giovanni's Room follows our main character, David, as he is an American living in Paris. He meets Giovanni one day at a bar. We just see how their relationship evolves from there. There is a lot of imagery of what is the Garden of Eden, a lot of the old world like Paris versus the US, which is the newer world, and it's just a very, very interesting, another heartbreaking read. I think I like to read to feel things, you know, and this does that for you. Coming at number 4, I have Bluets by Maggie Nelson, and this should be no surprise. This was in my favorite books, but this follows kind of like little vignettes of the color blue, Maggie Nelson's perception of the color blue, relating it to her friend who recently went through a horrible accident, her failing relationship, pleasure, love, depression, the natural world. And I just thought the research and evidence going behind color theory and just also natural world occurrences surrounding the color blue was so fascinating. Maggie Nelson is like truly, truly brilliant. She knows how to take these very theoretical explanations and ponderings and relating that to her own life, which is something that I love, and she does expertly here. It may not be for everyone, it's very disjointed, doesn't really follow a story specifically, but being a poetry reader, I'm used to not really following a narrative. I don't really read narrative poems, so I just thought that this was very interesting just for what it represents and what it does as a work of literature. Okay, coming in at number 3, I have a book that I cannot stop talking about, I cannot shut up about, and that's Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. This follows 2 Black British people, a man and a woman, as they meet at a bar one night and fall in love, but it was just so much more than a love story, and I think that could be a misconception going into this book. It is about romance, it is about relationships, a very intimate relationship, but it's also about privilege and class and exploring those issues as well, which I thought was very fascinating, reading from a British perspective. But I also loved how music was mentioned throughout. Kendrick Lamar was mentioned in Open Water, Frank Ocean was mentioned in Open Water, as well as Zadie Smith. And I just thought it was very, very cool to see a writer, a Black writer, paying homage to other amazing Black legends. And that's why I loved Open Water as well. I just thought the writing was phenomenal. Open Water is a story about what happens when you first meet someone and there's an instant connection, and where do you go from there, and how terrifying it could be. The sort of feeling of being in open water where land isn't in sight and you're possibly drowning, but can you find the courage to survive and keep going despite all of these terrifying things? Obviously, I'm gushing, so. Secondly, I have another Sally Rooney, and are we surprised? I also have not shut up about this, and that's Conversations with Friends. Conversations with Friends follows our main character, Frances, and her relationships with those around her, her relationship and friendship, and to Bobby, who was actually her ex-girlfriend, as well as Frances's relationship to Nick. And I just loved Conversations with Friends because I really, really related to Frances, not necessarily in terms of being in a relationship with a married man, but more so just her own doubts, her own insecurities really resonated with me. And she is also an aspiring writer, a poet, and like I said, I'm a sucker for characters like that. I know you're probably thinking, especially if you're a viewer of mine, where is the book? I know which book she's gonna mention, I'm just not sure if she wrote it in 2021. And you're right, I am gonna mention it right now. And my top 1 favorite book is Unearthed We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Can we just take a moment? This book has had such an impact on me, and the reason is this is the first book that I read in 2021, and this is the book that made me fall in love with reading again. Unearthed We're Briefly Gorgeous follows the main character, Little Dog, as he is writing letters to his mother. His family, Little Dog's family, migrated from Vietnam. He talks about the effects of the Vietnam War, as well as identity and finding your place in a new world. It was just beyond stunning. Coming of age story. There's also romance in here, but it's written again in a way that is very raw, very vulnerable, and very real. Literal genius. I love when poets write longer novels, write novels, because the intentionality behind the words, the structure, everything is so purposeful. There's not an unnecessary word in this book. It's just crafted with such care. I've recommended this book on countless, numerous occasions, and I just think that everyone should read it. Thank you for watching. Those were my top 10 favorite books of 2021. Let me know what your favorite reads are. This is probably going to be my last video that I post before the new year, before 2022. So I'm wishing you a safe and happy new year, and I'm very excited for the direction of my channel and just being able to have this platform, this small little corner on YouTube where we talk about books. I feel like I've gotten to know so many of you, and your support and kindness truly means the world to me. And I cannot wait to see what happens in 2022. So please stay safe, stay well, be well, and I will see you in 2022. Bye.
I was like, yo.